Yeah, there it is. Dearly beloved, I'm writing you 'cause I feel so far away. Last night when I checked, you were lying in your bed. When I left, you had nothing to say. Sometimes the bottle's half empty. Sometimes I drink till it's dry. Sometimes there's blues on the soles of my shoes. And sometimes I think I can fly. I thought I could hide in I-95 in the chatter of drunks in this bar, where the work comes in shifts, customers drift. Our fortune's not bound by the stars. Sometimes the bottle's half empty. Sometimes I drink till it's dry. Sometimes there's blues on the soles of my shoes. And sometimes I think I can fly. I don't remember the third verse. What's up, everybody? That's a marvelous song by a musician named Susie Vinnick. And Susie is a wonderful musician, singer, hell of a guitar player, songwriter. And she's Canadian, which I'm only mentioning because I'm gonna be focusing on Canadian music for a minute here. Let me just make sure that I'm gonna get over to Facebook and YouTube. I think right now I'm just sending to. No, I should be on all three. Maybe it'll take a second. Maybe maybe it'll just take a second. Here we go. Okay. What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? All right. So, where was that? Susie Vinnick, a wonderful Canadian musician. I wanted to segue from talking about Susie into talking about Stan Rogers. Let me just get everything set up here. All right. Here we got... Rather than just talk about it, let's see. How's everybody doing? Put some stuff in the comments. Say how you're doing. Here's a song. My old friend, good to see your face again. More welcome though yon trap and that old mare. For the wife is in a swoon, and I am all alone. Oh, Harris, fetch thy mare and take us home. Well, the wife and I came out for a quiet glass of stout, and a word or two with neighbors in the room. But young Clary, he came in as drunk and wild as sin, and swore the wife would leave the place with him. But the wife, as quick as thought, she said, no, I'll bloody not. Then struck the brute a blow about the head. He raised his ugly paw, and he lashed her on the jaw, and she fell on the floor like she were dead. Now, Harris, well, you know, I've never struck an angry blow, nor would I keep a friend who raised his hand. I was a Conchie in the war, crying, what the hell's this for? But I had to see his blood to be a man. I grabbed him by his coat, I spun him round and took his throat, and beat his head upon the parlor door. He dragged out an awful knife, and he roared, I'll have your life. And he stuck me, and I fell onto the floor. Now blood I was from neck to thigh, bloody murder in his eye, as he shouted out, I'll finish you for sure. But as the knife came down, I lashed out from the ground, and the knife was in his breast when he rolled. Now with the wife as cold as clay, I carried her away. No hand was raised to help us through the door, and I've brought her half a mile, but I've had to rest a while, and none of them I'll call a friend no more. For when the knife came down, I was helpless on the ground. No neighbor stayed his hand, I was alone. By God, I was a man, but now I cannot stand. Please, Harris, fetch thy mare and take us home. Oh, Harris, fetch thy mare and take us out of here. In my 59 years, I've never known that to call myself a man, for my loved one I must stand. Now, Harris, fetch thy mare and take us home. That's Stan Rogers is who that song is by. Stan Rogers. Good Canadian musician, gone before his time, and very, I don't think the word popular is appropriate. Revered is probably more appropriate in the Canadian folk music community. In the Venn diagram of folk musicians and Canadians, and especially Canadian folk musicians. And I've had the honor and privilege of crossing paths with a ton of Canadian musicians, both on tour, and I'm involved with like a sort of a consortium of us of folkies. Is sort of a broad regional thing. It's sort of just all of the Northeast. And I come from D.C. originally, and now I live in the New Jersey, New York area up there. So, you know, we're kind of the mid-Atlantic lower end of what you might think of as the Northeast. But really the Northeast, this organization, it includes people from New England, from Ontario. I don't remember how far west it goes, but, you know, way north and way east. So like Nova Scotia, the Maritimes, Prince Edward Island, all these different parts of Canada that are home to all these wonderful folk music styles. And, you know, I don't have like a power in this 5-paragraph essay. No, I don't have like a thing that I want to say, partially because I know so many people who know so much more than me. I should probably just have a bunch of folks on to just talk about like why is Canadian music so cool. But I wanted to mention it just because I was thinking of it and I love that song and I just want to play that song. And then I wanted to justify, how come you're playing that song? Well, on a Gangstagrass stream, right? I mean, you're the bluegrass guy, but what's all this Canadian folk music? Well, bluegrass as I've mentioned, is a sort of a mishmash fusion music in America that came together in the Appalachian region with a bunch of different influences, and a lot of what went into it was that Scots, Irish, Celtic fiddle tune influence. It's not everything, but that was a big part of it, and that influence also made its way over into the northeastern regions of Canada. I should probably call it southeastern regions of Canada, because it just keeps going way up there. But it shares a lot of the same influences, and when you look at sort of the ways that Canadian folk music has diverged, like it took some of the same influences and went in kind of similar but different directions. It's all part of a thing. That's my eloquent thesis for you today, folks. Happy Wednesday. It's all part of a thing. Ha ha. Yeah. There's a request on the YouTubes for Gordon Lightfoot. And I mean, I could, I suppose. Let's see. Yeah, kind of in theme, right? In keeping here with, we are after all talking about, we're always talking about bluegrass music. We're always talking about bluegrass music. So Gordon Lightfoot, I'll tell you, I have not familiarized myself with Gordon Lightfoot's performances. I know some of his songs decently well, but part of the reason that I am really at all aware of Gordon Lightfoot as a bluegrass musician is through a man named, see if we can get it in the comments, Tony Rice. Tony Rice is probably the reason why a lot of bluegrass musicians know anything about Gordon Lightfoot, because of Tony Rice's tendencies to play and sing the songs of Gordon Lightfoot and make them awesome. And I might do one, if I can figure out what key to do it in. This is a request, so it is obviously not prepared. All right. I'm playing around with double capos here. Throws all the string tensions out of whack. Always that second string. If we get enough guitarists on here who request it, I will do an entire hour and a half stream dedicated to tuning the B string of a guitar. Yeah. Just gonna... Let's see. Uh-huh. So yeah, in keeping... Oh. This mouse has extra buttons. Sorry. I swear I'm almost there. All right. So in keeping with bluegrass and talking about Canada and commonalities between American bluegrass music and Canadian folk music, we're gonna do Gordon Lightfoot's song, which was made popular to me and brought into the bluegrass sphere by Tony Rice, and it is a song about the wreck of a ship on Lake. Shoot, which lake is it actually on? Here's a friggin'. Which lake is it actually on? You know what? If you figure out which lake it's on, let me know. That's one of the Great Lakes. It's a boat, and I was making a grand point, and I got all snarled up because I actually don't know which lake it is. You know what they say, more talking, less music. Legend lives on from the Chippewa down of the big lake they called Jigitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy. A load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty. That good ship and true was a bone to be chewed when the gales of November came early. The ship was the pride of the American side, coming back from some mill in Wisconsin. As the big freighters go, it was bigger than most, with a crew and good captain well seasoned, concluding some terms with a couple steel firms when they left fully loaded for Cleveland. And later that night when the ship's bell rang, could it be the north wind they've been feeling? Wind in the wires made a tattletale sound, and a wave broke over the railing. And every man knew, as the captain did too, 'twas the witch of November come stealing. The dawn came late, and the breakfast had to wait, when the gales of November came slashing. Afternoon came, it was freezing rain in the face of a hurricane west wind. When supper time came, the old cook came on deck, saying, "Fellas, it's too rough to feed you." 7 p.m. a main hatchway caved in. He said, "Fellas, it's been good to know you." Captain wired in, he had water coming in, and the good ship and crew was in peril. And later that night, when his lights went out of sight, came the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours. The searchers all say they'd have made Whitefish Bay if they'd put 15 more miles behind her. They might have split up, or they might have capsized. They may have broke deep and took water. And all that remains is the faces and names of the wives and the sons and the daughters. Lake Huron rolls, Superior sings in the rooms of her ice-water mansion. Old Michigan steams like a young man's dreams. The islands and bays are for sportsmen. And farther below, Lake Ontario takes in what Lake Erie can send her. The iron boats go, as the mariners all know, with the gales of November, remember. In a musty old hall in Detroit, they prayed in the Maritime Sailors' Cathedral. The church bell chimed till it rang 29 times for each man on the Edmund Fitzgerald. Legend lives on from the Chippewa down on the big lake they called Kitchigumi. Superior, they said, never gives up her dead when the gales of November come early. Okay, he says right at the end, Lake Superior. Lake Superior, folks. Gordon Lightfoot tune brought into my life by the one and only Tony Rice. All right. Oh man, we're getting a hello all the way from Philadelphia. Philadelphia. I was in a conversation with somebody. We were doing like a my wife and I were doing a baby CPR course, you know, like you do, with this wonderful New Jersey lady. And yeah, I should clarify, I'm not from here. I'm not from New Jersey, and some people are like really, really from New Jersey. And so she was just talking about, like, you know, you should get certified and your babysitter should get certified, but the babysitter should know, like, they shouldn't call you. Like, you should be the last person that they call if something bad happens. You know, like, if you go to a wedding, like in Philadelphia or somewhere. And the way she said it, it was like, that's like the farthest you could go for a wedding or anything ever. Like, you would be, you know, an hour and a half away maximum. That's like the size of the world. I don't know. It was very sweet. It was very sweet. But obviously my world has been even smaller recently. And my memory of my past life is like slipping out of my head. Did I ever tell you I used to tour the world? Yes, we would drive all over the country and we would fly. We would get in airplanes with strangers and then we would hug them. I don't know. I mentioned I have a kid. I do. I do have a kid, and he is not going to remember the way that the world was prior to all of this, and which, you know, is not like anybody who's saying, oh boy, I can't wait till we get back to the way things were before. I got two things to say to that. And the first thing is, it won't happen. And the second thing is good, because I think there's a lot of things. I think we have the opportunity to improve a lot of things that were not good before all of this. Obviously, this is a terrible time with all sorts of things going wrong. But I'm really hoping that it's an opportunity to make some improvements. That said, I mean, we're probably also going to lose some things that we might have liked about the past. So it's just going to be weird. It's going to be weird. I don't know if anybody writes journals out there, if anybody keeps a journal, but I just started thinking, when we were getting ready to have our kid, I started thinking, what am I gonna? I should write some stuff down. I should document like how I feel, the way the world is. And I realized, not knowing, like I know the past and I know my present and I know, sort of what the immediate short-term future is, but I don't know how the future is going to look. And so I don't really know what to explain. You know what I mean? Like, if, for instance, tomorrow all cars disappeared, then in writing in my journal, I'd have to be like, so back in 2020, we had automobiles, and then, a detailed explanation of what cars are. Now, I don't think that's going to happen immediately, but what's a good example? I don't know. Large groups of people running around without masks used to be normal. And, for a while here, even as we get vaccinated, you guys know we're all going to still need to be wearing masks and adhering to social distancing and at least like washing your hands and not touching your face. Everybody here gets that, right? Everybody here is on board with that. I hope, because that would be great. Because we really need to do this. Not to drag it down, but I used to tour and play shows to crowds, and if we don't get this virus under control, I'm out of a job. That I cannot put it any clearer than that. I can get vaccinated, and that's fine. And you individually, or like the people who want to get vaccinated, can get vaccinated, but that's not going to get this to a manageable state, and that's not going to get us to the point where we can play any shows, let alone enough shows that we could put together tours. So I just wanted to say that. I don't know if that means that I'm gonna like lose or gain however many number of people viewing this because you don't like how that sounds. But at a certain point, your support only means so much if you're destroying our livelihood and our ability to do what we do, what we love, and our way of life. And when I say us, I mean me and my band, this band. This is the Gangstagrass account, right? So I'm speaking on behalf of Gangstagrass here, and all musicians, any performing musician who expects to gather a crowd of 20 people or 20,000 people. We can't do that. So, you gotta wear a mask, and you gotta get vaccinated, and you gotta wash your hands, and you gotta avoid crowds, and you gotta, if you need to wash your apples with soap and water, wash your apples with soap and water. But we probably don't need to do that if more people are just doing the basics. And it's pretty sobering for me, just to say it. It's I don't know. I mentioned, so I have a kid, right? And I've been getting on Reddit recently. And Reddit, actually, by the way, if anybody, I don't know if anybody's on Reddit, but I've noticed that they have a live streaming thing on there too, right? So there's an opportunity for musicians to get on there and do this sort of thing. So I've thought about doing that, but mostly I get on there and I'm on the different parenting communities. People expecting kids, people who've recently had kids of different ages. You're doing this, you're doing that, different life situations. And I have seen recently, there's groups specifically for, I had a baby during the pandemic. And it's great because, nobody else understands what that's like, so you find people with a shared experience and you can at least commiserate with them. And I've noticed, I didn't plan to talk about any of this, but I got to. So I'll play a song as soon as I get all this off my chest. So stick it out, and I promise I'll reward you. And so I've been following these parenting communities, and I like to respond, and help people out if they have any, if I have any advice. Like I'm in dad groups, and a lot of the time I'm just like, hey, sounds like what you're saying about, like, I wish that things were this way or that way with my wife, or I don't know how she feels or whatever, or I want to help but I don't know how. Sounds like you need to communicate, right? Usually that's my refrain. I just keep coming back to, like, you got to keep working on your communication, and, like, always, like, not just while she's pregnant, but keep doing it, forever. So I sort of see the same thing over and over again, and that's just the nature of being a dad. I think being a man in our society, there's a lot of communication work that needs to be done. So of course, I don't mind being part of that ongoing conversation. But I've seen a couple things recently in the parenting groups, and I am getting tired of responding to these posts where over and over again I see somebody and they say this. This is what they say, okay? It's often a woman, a pregnant person, and saying, I am pregnant, or somebody who recently gave birth, whatever, and it's either like, my parents are vaccinated and masked and they're cool and they're taking it seriously, but my in-laws not. Or they'll say, like, oh, my in-laws, sometimes it's interesting, like, my in-laws are cool, like my partner's parents, totally cool, but my parents, they, like, one or more of the new grandparents do not believe that SARS-CoV-2 exists, or that it is a real thing, or that it's a real threat, or that there's a pandemic going on, or that you need to wear a mask, or that you need to get vaccinated, wash your hands, whatever it is. They don't believe in it. They're not down. And I feel like I shouldn't let them near my kid, but I don't know. What should I do? And then, like, every single parent is like, well, first of all, don't let them near your kid. So you're right. But then, on top of that, you as a new parent, you have to set boundaries, right? And that's a big thing with parenting, with relationships with your family and everything. Is like, all of a sudden you are in charge of your family unit. not your parents, which up until this point, like throughout your childhood, you really defer to your parents, typically. And then you become an adult, and then it's sort of ambiguous. And then you have a kid. And when you have a kid, boom, okay, permanently, here is this thing that I am an authority on. I'm the parent, and you are the grandparent, and I appreciate your input, but ultimately it's my call. It's our call as the parents. With whatever, with anything, daycare, what we're going to feed them, religion, what they wear, whatever it is, anything. It's ultimately the parent's call. So the trick is in this specific relationship, with anybody who's trying to exert pressure or influence, but especially with the grandparents, because that's the one that's like the closest relationship where sometimes you see them like encroach, and you just got to set a boundary. And like, they're not going to do it. You got to do it, So you set the boundary, and then they have to they don't have to respect it, but it'd be great if they did respect it. But that's not on you, right? You don't say like, you have to get vaccinated, I'm going to make you get vaccinated. You can't really do that. What you can do, however, and a lot of this stuff comes down to it, what you can do is say, I'm sorry, or don't say I'm sorry, either way, but it comes out usually. You say, I will not allow you to see your grandkid if you don't get vaccinated, or at the very least are not willing to wear a mask, get tested, wash your hands, any of these things. And by the way, there are other shots that you get. Like you have a kid these days, the most common one is the Tdap, which includes tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. None of which is whooping cough, right? You don't want a baby to get whooping cough. So conventionally, anybody who wants to handle a weeks-old newborn had better be up to date on their Tdap. And you'll hear people say, oh, no, I'm fine with the Tdap. I just don't know about this. I don't know about this COVID shot, man. I don't know about the COVID shot. Or they'll just say, I don't believe in things in syringes administered through needles by people in white coats. Or they'll say whatever it is that they've been told to say. And I don't mean to overgeneralize, but it's a frustrating and saddening thing to me. That this thing keeps happening so much that I'm just like, I either want to like sort of write my one response to every time this happens, or just give up on responding at all. Because my response is basic. I just over and over again, I'm like, that sucks. That is terrible. I'm sorry that you have to be in this position. Obviously, like, you got to learn to set boundaries, and that's part of being a parent. But I'm so sorry that your own parents or in-laws are the ones that are putting you in this situation. I should be clear here. My parents, totally cool. My in-laws, totally cool. Everybody is either getting vaccinated or has been vaccinated as time allows. So I'm not like sideways talking about my own family here. They are cool, and that's awesome. Because otherwise we couldn't see them with our kid, and we'd be the ones having to throw up that wall, and it's a hard thing to have to do. It's a really disappointing thing to have to do. So, and the disappointment is familiar if you look back at 2020 or any of the years preceding, but especially in 2020, if you look back and you see this all getting out of hand and you attribute it to a failure in leadership, then you know what this disappointment feels like, because we look to our leaders, right? We look to our leaders and we expect them to have answers and to fix it. And in this case, it did not happen until much later than it should have happened. And now it's happening. And now we look to the appropriate leaders who are solving this, which is great. And we do this, you know? I mean, part of 2020 proved to us that, like, if we leave everyone to their own devices, people will, in a lot of cases, make good calls. But it's also heartbreaking. You know, I forget if I mentioned this, but, like, we got a communication from a venue, and this has happened to every musician, I'm sure. And it basically said, hey, look, yeah, we have this show. We're not really going to be able to, like, do any like safety stuff, but if you still want to do it, you can do the show. And you could sort of see it was like they were holding up a sign that said, please help me, please don't say yes to this. But they had to pass that buck, you know. They put it in our court, and of course we said no. But, like, we shouldn't have to. You know, I acknowledge that musicians and as celebrities, like, we have some power, and we used that power. But it's just, I don't know, bothers me maybe more than it should when a venue or a booker passes the buck like that, because their power, you know, they're the ones that are really responsible for the venue and ultimately for the show. You know, we show up and we do it, and we sort of own the stage while we're on there. But so I guess I just feel like, you know, I looked at that venue as an authority, as a leader, and I was disappointed. And I look at some of these grandparents that I hear about on social media, on Reddit, and I'm disappointed. And, you know, looking at political leaders and anybody, it's not about how much power do you have on paper, like how much legal power, like if you are the law. I'm not talking about that. I'm really talking about real social power. If you're someone who has influence over anybody else, you have a responsibility to use that influence to help them and to protect them. And you have to know that. You have to know that about yourself and about what you do, how you exist in the world. It's a big responsibility. So, rant over, but wear a mask, get vaccinated, and let me get back to doing my job, please, because we're not here to listen to me yap. We're here to listen to me play music, and this is the best I can do right now on the stream thing with the camera and the microphone and the text comment responses. But hey, I'd rather be doing a live show. Now, as promised, here is your reward. Here is a Jimmy Martin song. I don't know, all that ranting takes it out of me, but at the same time, you do have to get it all off your chest every now and then, don't you? Some people drink champagne out under the stars, while others drink wine leaning over a bar. But all that I need, dear, to make me feel fine is to know that your love will forever be mine. Give an ocean of diamonds, a world filled with flowers, to hold you closely for just a few hours. You whisper softly that you love me too. Change all my dark clouds to the bluest of blue. Well, I don't need their champagne, and I don't drink their wine. But if you refuse me, my poor heart will pine. I'll be so lonesome till the day that I die. As long as I live, dear, you'll still hear me cry. I'd give an ocean of diamonds, a world filled with flowers, hold you closely for just a few hours. Hear you whisper softly that you love me too. Change all my dark clouds to the bluest of blue. Change all my dark clouds to the bluest of blue. All right. Anyways, thanks for sticking around, folks. Got a question on, I guess that's YouTube, about the drum sounds we use, any particular software we like. So that's a question best directed to our producer, founder, mastermind, Wrench, who is on, I think, every other Saturday. I think he might be on this Saturday. So definitely come back for that. It's like a 3 p.m. afternoon slot. But I'll answer what I can. The software and hardware that we use for the beats, for the recorded music, Wrench puts the stuff together. He uses Pro Tools for the general production I forget if he uses a separate program to put the beats and samples and stuff together, but I've seen some pretty intricate stuff in Pro Tools. So I have this feeling that he does everything in there. I think he's just a Pro Tools guy straight up. And he's not doing any kind of like beat specific software. Now for the hardware, if you've seen us perform live, then what he's using to replicate the beats is he pre-records and loads them into a loop pedal, and that's a Boss loop pedal. It's I want to say it's like the 300 RC 300. It's the big one, the big long one, right? I used to have a 2-pedal version. Now they've gotten smart and made a single foot switch version, but they've got one. He has this one, and the smart thing about it is you're able to load in. This is a little backstage behind the scenes, how we make the sausage. He's able to load in up to 3 separate phrases for each track. So he's got if you see him doing his, touch his toes between every song, that's because he has to reach down and go to the next song. But within a song, he's got like start, stop, and he can also go between different phrases. So for instance, on a song like, good example would be Bound to Ride. So with Bound to Ride, there's usually like, I think with most songs, there's like a sort of a standard level track. Then there's like add some extra stuff going on for like really pumping it up for like a build up or a second verse or a chorus or something. And then the third phrase will be saved for like special use, which might be, it could be an intro or an ending or some sort of fill sound. But then sometimes, like with Bound to Ride, it's like super minimal, super quiet. So it's just like, so that's cool if we want to bring it down. So if we've been just cranking it with everything going on, out of like maybe if there's a solo, big solo battle back and forth, where me and Brian Farrow are going back and forth on banjo and fiddle, and then Wrench will yell out like, all right, break it down, and then it's like a boom, a boom, a boom, boom, and then hear that train come rolling, and I'm bound to ride, and then beat behind that is just super minimal, and then we go from there, we build it back up, and if anybody watching this, if you're only familiar with us from our recordings, I will say thank you and welcome, but you gotta check out what we're like live, and obviously we're not doing any live shows right now, so that's not an option, but there's a ton of recordings. We have a live album called Pocket Full of Fire, and if you look that up, there's also a bunch of live video from some of our shows that you can get an idea of what it's really like when we're actually doing this stuff live. And I tend to think about that a lot more because that's what I do regularly is the live stuff. But it's important to remember that some people are coming in from the recording side. So anyway, if you're in the UK, the afternoon timing on Saturdays might also work okay because I know our afternoon is your evening. So check that out. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk about how he puts the stuff together. So that's the software and the hardware. Oh, and then just, a side note on the drum sounds, the samples, let me not say this if it's not true. He creates, so Wrench is a drummer, and he has created a lot of drum samples. Now, I don't know for sure if he actually creates like every single sample for all of the Gangstagrass music. I have a feeling he does not. I have a feeling he has like a sample library and he's, listens through like any beat producer does and just picks out the stuff that just, like the really exactly the sound that you need to have. But I know also, and we've been working on a really cool project recently that I can't talk too much about, but I know that he is unparalleled at recreating things, which is to say, let's say you hear something and you're like, oh, that's perfect, but I don't want to use that sample because that's a sample from a record. And I'm a bluegrass musician, so I don't really understand all this sampling stuff. But apparently, if you use a sample, kind of like if you're using any other recording, even if you're using like this much of it, you gotta go through clearance. You gotta do all this stuff. And I guess it's automated and it's made a little bit easier. But you gotta do a lot of stuff. And if you have a bunch of samples, then you got to do a lot of stuff with a bunch of samples and just go through and make sure that everything has been cleared. And if anybody needs to be paid for their material, you pay them for their material. So, all that to say that if you hear a sample and you're like, oh, that sounds so great, but I don't want to use that sample because that would be a headache, why don't I just record my own version? And then you own that. And I know he has that a lot, but not necessarily for everything. Anyway, hope that answers your question. And again, if you have any more specific questions on stuff, I'm sure Wrench would be very happy to answer it. I can pretend that you asked about my guitar, though. This is a wonderful Martin D18 that I picked up new. Because Martins have this great lifetime warranty that only applies to the original purchase. And Martins are, vintage Martins are like the best guitars, but they don't come with that warranty. And I'm a young enough guy, or I was when I bought it, that I thought, best of both worlds would be if I buy one new when I'm young, and then it will become vintage as I play it. Because time passes. That's what I thought to myself. And it's not vintage yet, but I love it. I've loved it from when I picked it up at the store and played it several times and kept coming back, and then finally decided to buy the thing. And it's interesting. I was talking to somebody about this, where as a fellow musician, and she said that her mom had passed a little bit before. Like things happen in your life, you lose relatives, and then at the same time you're also like coming out with albums, and so you just like the two things get linked in your mind because like you just, life goes on and you have to keep doing your thing. And she had talked about, I think, sort of how her mom was sort of in the guitar in a way. And shortly after I got this guitar, I've never really told anybody about this, but shortly after I got this guitar, a close family friend, one of my musical mentors, passed away sort of unexpectedly. He had not been in great health, but I think it was one of those things where like you go in for one thing and it seems like a minor thing, and you just don't come out again. And I've had that happen to a number of people, and it's hard. It's a hard one to absorb and process because you're not really prepared for it. Anyway, and he had been a real mentor and influence to me, and so I often think, like that was sort of a point in my life where I was like, I should really own this guitar, because then I'll have this guitar and then it'll be, a part of me and everything. And so it was a really important, wonderful moment. And then shortly after that, this, devastating loss. And I do kind of associate the two together. And I do sometimes think that he's, I definitely think of him often when I play this guitar. So, there's a little bit about me. How much bluegrass can be played or riffed to with just the blues scale? That's a really good question. A lot of it, but the two things I would say would be it depends on the song, because some songs are some songs are more bluesy, and then some have maybe more of a modal influence that's not precisely bluesy. And if there was one thing that Tony Rice was sometimes guilty of, was like throwing in like blues licks in places that did not necessarily belong there. I mean, he pulled it off and he was confident, and everybody was like, hell yeah. But you know, a fiddle tune, for instance, that's so something like that, you know, you might not necessarily. Okay, I mean, I tried to keep that kind of tasteful, but yeah, I don't know. You wouldn't necessarily want to do like blues scale riffs over fiddle tunes in general, unless you really wanted to be like that hot shot blues riffs person. That's sort of a context thing, I guess. The other thing that I would say is when we say blues scale, we're talking about kind of a lot of different things, right? There are a bunch of different concepts that go into that, and I feel like I'm going to run up against my time here. But okay, so let's say we're in A. You could have as a starting off point, let's say the A minor pentatonic scale. Might be a place one could start. But even there, I mean, it's so hard for me to really stick to a strict scale, because so much of this stuff, you start introducing other notes and accidentals and things, and this is really some of the fun of like a Tony Rice style bluegrass guitar, is, you know, you'd start off with that skeleton. And then throw in, like, so you get your flat 3, and then slide it up to the major 3. And this is really kind of at the heart of bluegrass musically, is you've got a lot of these different influences, and they all kind of come together, and you can see it even in, like, constructing these scales. You know, it's just a lot of, it's pretty much, if you were to take a major scale or even just like a major pentatonic scale, right? So a major pentatonic scale and A minor pentatonic scale, and put those together. I guess that's all those notes, right? Yeah, that's most of the notes in a chromatic scale. We've omitted a few, and that's pretty much what you'd be able to use. And then, you know, if you really, again, you know, if you want to really establish yourself and be fancy, you could use some of those notes too, the notes I've just omitted, which would be, notes I'm omitting would be like a flat 2, sharp 4, flat 6, and a natural 7. So if you throw in any of those sparingly, you could build, you know, slightly more standout licks, or licks with a little bit more identity to them. I've literally never thought this out loud. I'm just like, well, this is things that I know to be true. But yeah, so for instance, yeah, something like that. And I've definitely heard people, that sort of thing. So that's where I'm doing kind of honestly, like, this is something I'm kind of borrowing back from banjo. This kind of little 3-note roll, this like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Like a 3-finger lick that starts with the Drone string and keeps coming back to it in groups of 3. So that's something that's incorporating the natural 7, the flat 6, and both of those, a lot of this stuff is really just like you use an accidental and then resolve it. So that's the raised, the natural 7 going down to the flat 7. The flat 7 is sort of more of the natural note in this scale. So here then it's the natural 6, the flat 6 on the way to the 5, and keep going. So raised 4 to a natural 4. So that whole chromatic line. Then a flat 3 to a major 3. One of the more popular accidental resolutions. You hear that a lot in bluegrass. And then you get flat 3 to major 3 to flat 3 down to 2. That kind of thing. That kind of same note but going in a different direction. And then just 7 to 1. So again, did I make that lick up? I don't know. Did I rehearse it? Absolutely not. Have I lifted it from various places? Yeah, I mean, probably. I probably have, because these are all just individual concepts. You could put them all together in kind of any order that you want. Yeah, and it really does come down to stress and release and a bunch of different concepts. But central to a lot of music theory is tension and resolution, stress and release, setting something up. And more complicated than simply like expectation and then resolution is also setting an expectation, and then, for instance, this flat 3 could have an expectation where you're going to resolve it up to the major 3. So, but then you could also go back to it and resolve it in a different direction. So setting an expectation and then defining that expectation, I think kind of elevates it above simply like, oh, this music sounds interesting. Or it sounds nice. It sounds pleasant. And takes it further to a place of I'm not quite sure where it's going. That starts to make it a little bit more interesting. Yeah. Keep the questions coming. I think I'm probably gonna wrap up here, but always appreciated. Always down to do the impromptu lesson. I should probably mention that I'm available for private lessons as well on banjo, guitar, mandolin, voice, songwriting, arranging, figuring out your life, choral conducting. I'm available for private lessons. I'm a little bit less available these days. Did I mention I have a kid? So I am actually going to go check and make sure that he's doing okay. But I really appreciate it, folks. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for letting me get some stuff off my chest. Please wear a mask and get a vaccine as soon as it's available. And with that, I hope to see you at our next show. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm optimistic. As much as I rant about stuff, I'm very optimistic. I'm looking forward to getting back out there. And I believe that we will. So, yeah.